Welcome to the Global Affair podcast, brought to you by Love Out Loud, the world's largest love-based movement actualizing a civilization of love by 2030. My name's Nicole Gibson, and join me and some of the world's brightest minds as we bring some of the most important and controversial conversations of our time into a space of unity. It's important to know that as your host, this isn't about my personal opinion or bias, but rather an opportunity to listen with love, honesty, curiosity, and reveal the true universal experience us humans have amongst the differences. So if you love the show, please let us know by giving us a rating and tell us how to make this conversation easier for other people to jump into as well. And with that, let's get it. Andrea Albright, welcome to the Global Affair podcast.
Thank you so much.
I'm really looking forward to this. To our listeners, Andrea is actually the founder of Beverly Hills Publishing, which is the publisher that's publishing Legacy Disorder. So it's a privilege and honor to have you on our show, Andrea.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Nicole, celebrate your new amazing book, and I am honored to be your publisher and help to magnify this message that's coming through you.
Thank you. And, I think it would be great to give our audience a bit of a background around what differentiates Beverly Hills Publishing, the fact that you are an entrepreneur, not just an author and a publisher. So there's that kind of understanding of entrepreneurship. And I think you've infused that in such an amazing way into the ethos of Beverly Hills Publishing. So I'd love to touch on that, and then we can build upon the conversation and eventually get to some key points around legacy disorder, which I'm excited to talk about.
Fantastic. Well, I am an author. I wrote my first book in 2006, and I discovered how to launch multi-million-dollar brands from being an authority on a subject. And after hearing all these authors complain about their publisher, and they would say, my publisher never helped me with any of the marketing or the promotion or the PR for the book. And I realized I had an opportunity to disrupt the $100 billion publishing industry by serving authors. And so we go across all media. It's a media disruption. And we publish. We also do the marketing, the branding, and the PR. So to have one firm that does all of this, that's the disruption. And that's how we are serving our authors like you.
All right. And what do you look for, like when you're thinking about partnering with an author? What's the kind of thesis?
Well, we specialize in thought leadership. So people who have been through a journey, they have discovered solutions for their industry, and they're at a point where they're ready to give back. And the authority is the top, more than an expert. They are the best at the subject. And so when you are a thought leader who is evolving the conversation, disrupting the status quo, and providing solutions to your industry in a way that no one else is, this is where publishing a book and then getting the major media publications to write about you, that's what really establishes the authority. And so we look for people like yourself who are disrupting the status quo.
Okay, and let's go back to like the first book that you ever wrote and kind of your journey. How many books have you written now?
I am working on my 29th book as an author, and we've published over 100 books.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's amazing. So, you're a titan in the space.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
no one's ever called me a titan before, Nicole.
Just here with all the compliments,
Very
Andrea. Cool. So 29 books. I mean, that's amazing. I obviously am very passionate about the process of writing. I think it's an amazing opportunity, writing a book, to really narrow in on what your philosophy really is on a certain subject. And I know that the books I've written, I hadn't made up my mind yet when I started writing the book around my position on certain subjects, the first being love and now legacy disorder really being an exploration of power. The book writing process allowed me to clarify my own perspective in such a meaningful and I think important way. And so I'd love to hear your kind of reflections on all the 29 different subjects that you've written on.
Well, I think you said it very well. It makes you to really focus your intention and your ideas. Because as an entrepreneur who is disrupting an industry, I'm constantly creating new solutions. I have new processes. I see ways that things can be improved. And when I decide, okay, it's time to put my ideas into a book, what it does is it distills the best, because all the other noise, all the things that are not as important get pushed aside, because you really think about, what do I want to publish? What do I want to be not only known for, but what is the conversation that I want to have? And when you publish, many people don't know this, but it actually copyrights your ideas. And so when you are an entrepreneur, when you are disrupting an industry, there are only 3 ways to really declare that your intellectual property is yours. And that is through a trademark, which can be very hard to get, a patent that can take decades, and if you ever get one. But a copyright on a published book is the fastest way to document your ideas and then to declare that these are mine. So no one can steal them, no one can rip them off. And so I use publishing not only as a way to build my businesses and to attract interviews and media and the right clients and the right business partnerships, but I also use it to cement my ideas. Because otherwise people, can steal them. So you really think about, well, what do I want to share with the world? What is meaningful and important for me to document in publishing? And it is a very cathartic process. Yeah. I would say it's even spiritual, because 100%. You go to the highest parts of yourself and you really consider what really matters and what impact do I want to make with this book.
Yeah, I love it. A mentor said to me really early on in my journey, one of the most important things to understand is the conversations you want to have.
Beautiful. It affects everything in your life.
100%.
That becomes your world. And that's whom you attract, are the people who are resonating with that message. And so, we are surrounded by media. Today's world, you cannot escape media.
Yeah. And I think it's about 250,000 touch points with different advertisements every day.
Wow.
Yeah, now.
It just keeps growing and growing.
In the modern world, yeah.
And so there's a saying in Buddhism, water is to fish what thoughts are to man. And that means that the fish are swimming in water all the time. Well, I've revised this to say media is to man or humanity.
Thought control.
Thought control. The media you choose to tune into literally becomes the way you think. And then those are the words that you're putting out. And so that conversation is what you're going to attract. Yeah. And if you are full of anger and negativity and complaining, then those are the only people you're going to be surrounded by. And so you're going to have a very disheartened view of the world versus what we do at Beverly Hills Publishing, and the books that we choose to publish are raising the vibration of media, having positive conversations of empowerment and solutions.
That's really something that you've kind of thought through as a part of your kind of core criteria.
Absolutely.
They've got to be evolving a conversation, elevating a consciousness
yes.
within a certain industry or the world at large.
And as an entrepreneur, I believe that creating a business that builds and creates value for others, not only is it a wonderful personal development and spiritual practice on your own, because you're constantly in integrity or not in integrity with that intention, but also those are the people with whom you are attracting. Yeah. And so your life and your world continues to get elevated. And yes, the books that we publish, these are not only the books that I want to be a part of in sharing this message with the world, but also these are the books I want to read.
Yeah. And these are the conversations you want to have.
These are the conversations I want to have. Conversations are like food to my soul.
Yeah.
And the words that you are surrounding yourself with, that is the water that you are swimming in. And so if you have toxic water, you have a toxic fish. Yeah. If you have clean, pure, high vibration water, then that fish is going to be healthy and vibrant and alive.
Yeah. So 29 books ago, what was your first book? Because I want to tie this into your kind of concept of legacy. Yeah.
Well, I was terrified to write and release my first book. I remember thinking, no one is going to read it except my mom. Everybody's going to think I'm stupid. And I almost didn't release it because my own ego was, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I'm not smart enough. But I remember saying to myself, if I can help one person, then isn't it worth it to be humbled or humiliated? Like, wouldn't that be worth it? I was like, yes, that is worth it. And so my first book is called Reveal the Thin Within. And it's all about I used to struggle with my body image, and I was a yo-yo dieter. And I had some amazing discoveries that allowed me to love my body and care for my body from a place of love instead of judging it and weighing it and taking diet pills and doing all these destructive things to my body. And so I wanted to help others who were struggling. And I released that book, and it went on to create thousands of success stories. And people from all over the world would email me, and some of them would say, your book saved my life. I mean, I was going to kill myself, and then I found your book, and it gave me hope to live one more night. And now I love my body, I love myself, and I think about, what if I didn't release that book because I thought I wasn't good enough?
Yeah.
I mean, this is direct reflection back that, yeah, I've been of service. I've helped people. And so that's what really kept me going in the fitness and the health industry, where everyone said, you can never compete with the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies and all the huge weight loss companies. But I just really wanted to be of service. And so I learned internet marketing. And
When was this?
This was back in 2006.
Okay.
I'm
so
like
right in the boom, basically.
the boom, the beginning, back when people used to think, oh, the internet's a fad, or, it's not safe, you can't put your credit card.
Yeah.
But I realized that this is the future, and I wanted to connect directly with my audience. And so I learned internet marketing, and I went after keywords. This thing called YouTube came along. It was like, what's YouTube? Put some videos up there. No one knew that Google was going to buy YouTube. And I ended up on the front page of Google. And so that's how I built my business, was connecting directly with the audience through internet marketing. And then every time I would get press and publicity, I realized that's the best kind of advertising. And every time I'd write a book, more people wanted to talk to me. And then it established me as an authority in one of the most competitive industries in the world. I've published over 20 books on health. I've been on the cover of Women's Health and Fitness magazine, which is the #1 magazine in the fitness industry. And they said, Andrea, you're not just an influencer with millions of followers. You are a thought leader because your ideas are evolving women's health. And when you can establish yourself as a thought leader, when your ideas are transforming your industry, that's the most powerful position to have, because everyone wants to work with you and be a part of it. But it's also the greatest contribution to your society and to the part that you're impacting. And so true leadership is rare, as I know you know, and you talk about it in your book.
Yeah. And
people are starving for leadership, starving for authentic authority.
And this is this begs my next question, which is, is thought leadership really something that is as simple as a decision? Can someone just decide to become a thought leader? Or, I think about my brain as an example, and it just doesn't really stop. The amount of ideas I have in a day is difficult to contain. I don't actually know if I would wish it on someone. And it's my brain is always kind of evolving a conversation with itself, and then that, I guess, gives me an opportunity to reflect that in my work. But for someone that doesn't maybe have that predisposition, what would you kind of say to that person that maybe on one level kind of wants to be on that leading edge, but is struggling to think big enough or bold enough to evolve a conversation and become a thought leader as you're describing them?
I would say, if you have the inclination, keep going, because I don't believe that we choose this.
Yeah, like how do you break paradigms?
Yeah.
Is it innate? Is it something that you can kind of discipline yourself towards?
I often say that this message chose me. and I am in service of it.
Yeah.
You know, every day I wake up and I say, how can I serve this vision that's coming through me? And when you are a visionary, and people, you know, it's a very small percentage of society that are actually visionaries.
Yeah. Well, only 1% of systems thinkers, for starters.
Right. 1% system thinkers.
Yeah.
That's intense and crazy.
Yeah.
And also, we need these visionary thinkers because that's how humanity finds the solutions. And I've been told I'm crazy and I'm unrealistic and I'm a dreamer my entire life until it became true. And now I'm a genius.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. And so what I want my voice and my books to connect with the visionaries who know that they've been chosen. They've been chosen by a vision that's bigger than them, and they're here to serve it and to be a part of it. But yet it's not about you. It's not, are you good enough? Are you smart enough? Even if you're ready. Because I think so many people wrap their ego around
their identity
instead of just allowing the vision to come through you.
Yeah.
Because it's your greatest teacher as well. It humbles you. You have to have patience, and most of all, you have to have commitment and dedication to tune everybody else out, except the vision that's coming through you. And I believe we haven't even seen the capacity of humanity's visionaries because most of them are silenced, or they're told they're unrealistic, or society does not support those visionaries. And so that's what I write my books about, and why we have these conversations is because if you are one of the 5% of people who are here to disrupt the status quo and provide solutions for humanity, we need to keep that vision coming through you.
Yeah, I think I love this message so much. I think like the most creative, brilliant people on our planet are often the people that are the ones put under a pressure cooker. You know, the nature of our society and the inclination to take and extract rather than give and nourish. Often those that have the highest capacity to take on responsibility, to shine, to demonstrate, I guess, what society sees as success, often they're simultaneously the ones that others lack a lot of empathy for. You know, that they struggle to kind of be in that vulnerability, which is so needed, I think, in order to become who you're meant to become in that space. But so often it's abused. You know, I think about some of my favorite musicians over the years as an example, but also, you know, many other artists, thought leaders that haven't been looked after by our world. And I think it's important that we have publishing houses like Beverly Hills Publishing that kind of have the back of the creator, because it's not an easy thing to put your heart and soul into something and simultaneously, you know that you can't overly identify with it. You know, it's like you got to go through this process. Every time I create something, it's the same process. I go to the depth of my soul, and then you have to give it away.
Yes.
And then it's not yours anymore.
It's not yours.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like releasing a child into the world, right? It's like you can't control how that child influences or impacts people. But I mean, I have people reading my books, you know, years and years later that say it was a pivotal turning point in my life. And it's like, it has nothing to do with me, you know?
Yeah.
I put it out there, and then you never know who or when or how it's going to touch somebody at the exact moment where they needed it the most.
Yeah, I really get that so much. It's a very special thing to see your creation kind of outlive you.
Exactly. Well, that's the legacy piece, right? I mean, books live beyond the author, and it is the extension of you, but yet it's not you, because it has its own life, a life of its own. And I wish that more creative people could have that detachment from it, because I think that's, you know, the whole tortured artist scenario. Like, I feel like we could, as a society, move past that.
Yeah.
You do not have to be tortured just because you are a creative person. And there are ways to create without having, like you said, your ego wrapped around or your identity wrapped around it. because then you can truly be, again, in service of the creativity, and you can allow the experience to move through you and then to leave.
Yeah.
And, this is probably why I write more books, is because I don't want to be attached to just one message. Like, that's a lot of pressure. Whereas it's easier when okay, I'm going to publish a book a year. I'm going to continue to be on the edge of thought leadership, because that's what thought leaders do. We are constantly evolving the conversation. Just like you said, you have more ideas, in a day that you're like, what do I even do with all of this? Well, this is, as a publisher, I'm like, I want to remove all the obstacles that it takes for you to share those thoughts with the world. Because we do need more support around the creative process, but also the authors and the artists don't need to be so attached.
Yeah, no, I really agree. And I think it's, there is a level of suffering and pain, I think, probably required to create something brilliant, because it's the process of, transmutation, metamorphosis, and the deeper you go, I think the more connected you are to the human experience, and the more you can convey that. But the trick is to know when to let it go.
Yeah, to know when the suffering is no longer serving you.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we want to tap into all emotion. There's nothing that's off limits, because if you're like, oh, I can never have suffering as part of my palette to create with, then that's a dimension that you're not accessing.
Yeah, that's right.
So being fluid and moving through all emotions and forms of expression makes you a better creator, a better communicator, but then let it go.
Yeah. I mean, it's so core to, I think, the central message in legacy disorder.
Yeah.
Which is, in order to really serve a legacy that lasts the millennia, generations to come, there's got to be a willingness to transcend the material, to let go of the material attachment. Because I think whilst that's there, whilst that attachment, whether it's an identity attachment, whether it's an attachment to, needing to experience the fruits of your hard work right now, and not having that patience and that grace and humility with the process, that is inevitably going to create a barrier between you and your ability to vision 1,000 years into the future, because the focus becomes kind of short term. And one of the things I think a lot of entrepreneurs aren't encouraged to do enough is really not just think about your 10-year plan. Think about, 100 years from now. Think about 1,000 years from now, and what is really going to have significance. What message, what project, what solution is really going to have significance. And if you can connect to that, what I've experienced in my own journey is the vastness and the relevance of what you're working on is so big that the level of support that you open up, energetically just becomes so immense, because your vision becomes so vast and spacious. I think there's a quote that I love, which is, most people's problems are their problems aren't big enough.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, and I think that's what it speaks to. If you're working towards higher quality problems, bigger problems, if you let go of these kind of really not so important things and have that perspective, we're capable of leaving a legacy that's so far beyond, I think, what we get taught.
Well, I love this about your message, because it is future thinking. It's futurism, but it's with intention and consciousness.
Yeah.
And also, and how you feel like the empowerment of the individual, right? Zoom out, see what world do you want to create, and why do you think that's important for leaders to do that?
I mean, the world I want to create is a world that free thinking is one of the most protected kind of commodities. And in order to have free thinking, we need to have a certain level of self-awareness. I think, like you were saying at the beginning of the interview, the level of influence we have, so the level that we are influenced every day by media, so many of the things that we think aren't ours. And we don't know why we think the things that we think. We don't know why we have the insecurities we have. And a lot of the time, to your story that you were sharing, these insecurities, say it's body image, you're being held against an expectation or an ideal that you didn't design, you didn't choose. You're then comparing yourself. You're feeling the weight of these expectations that really you had nothing to do with in the first place. and that's affecting the thoughts that are running through your head. It's affecting how you're feeling. It's affecting, what you go on to pursue. And this is so rife in so many different facets of our world. Imagine if we could really learn to just be present with what is and understand that you're having an experience, I'm having an experience. It's not that my experience is right and yours is wrong. It's actually, that there's space for all of it, and let's have a dialogue, let's have a conversation, let's seek to be in a proper relationship with the things around us and the people around us and the ideas, that are around us. I think this landscape is going to set humanity up for the best possible chance at becoming, incredible, and I think that is our potential as a species. But whilst we have this, inherent need to control the environment around us, to get others to agree with us, that we have to be, we're putting being right over, seeking to understand or choosing love. And I have compassion for it, because I think it's what a lot of people revert to in order to try and simplify an otherwise very complex world. If we just fixate on, the oversimplification or the generalization of things.
Right.
It really is, it's a laziness.
Yes.
In a way.
And the power of groupthink is, it's intoxicating. And it makes sense why we have, evolved this way, because back in the day, we were in about a tribe of maybe 100 people.
Yeah.
And if you were ostracized from that tribe,
Death.
then you're dead. Yeah. A human alone in the wild does not succeed, does not thrive, won't survive. We are group animals.
Yeah.
And so back in the day, when there were only 100 people or so who you were maybe influenced by, but if you zoom out to today's world, and the development of our brains have not caught up with
Totally.
the development of our technology, and also the communication that is now bombarding us all day, every day. And so when people just automatically start thinking the way what they're hearing in these groups, you can hear it. Like they're regurgitating thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
And they've
really truly believing that
personalized
it's
them.
original.
They think it's original, but they also personalize them as though it really is impacting them.
Yeah.
And then they are disempowered because they're not focused on what you can actually do. In 24 hours in a day, you have so many opportunities to be in control. Infinite amount of choices. And be in control of your emotions, in control of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And so here are these people who are going around, with anger and resentment and even fear, and they're choosing it, whereas you have the power to not choose that.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I are both so passionate about individual thinking, individualism, because individualism is under attack in our society, because if you can get people to all think and group think, then you can control them.
Totally, but it's just like an interesting paradox that we're living in, because I think that there's, this rising of almost like hyper individualism that is really advocating, and we've spoken about this before, like, subjectivity is the only reality, that who I say I am is, all it is, and what you say about me has no relevance. And I think that's, that's not necessarily a wise direction to move either. I think we need to both simultaneously learn how to face reality as it is, and understand that we have the power to change it and influence it simultaneously, because this is what kind of brings order to the chaos. And I think what's playing out, I think, collectively right now is this manifestation of what has otherwise been a very kind of restricted culture in a lot of ways, where we haven't been free to express who we really are. And it's now kind of the pendulum is swinging so far in the other direction. And I think a really nice anchor point in some of these conversations is, well, what message is really, empowering for the individual and allows progress, to exist in the world, and also creates a sense of, acceptance and unity. I think both of these things can exist. Polarization is important when we're challenging ideas and we're looking to progress, but it can be done in a way that's not antagonistic. And I think this is the level of emotional maturity that I definitely would love to see, and I hope legacy disorder plays a role in kind of facilitating that we can be secure enough in ourselves to speak the truth when that's relevant, and do it in a way that is also compassionate, and allows space for other people to share, their position. It doesn't have to be so dualistic all the time, us and them.
I love that. And that's your message is so kind and loving, and this idea that there's space for everyone's expression, and for you to be true to yourself does not mean you have to be angry at others.
Yeah.
And the idea of oppression and suppression, it's like, well, are you, how much of your soul is really suppressed, right? It's like, it's your choice in every moment to either be a voice of positive, of love, of kindness, but that doesn't mean you have to make others wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that revelation, that it's actually it's a win-win formula.
Yes.
Actually, that it's this zero-sum bias that so many of us have been led to believe it's a consciousness that needs to evolve. And what I mean by that is any kind of mindset that we adopt that translates as I can only win if you lose.
Right.
That is so flawed.
It's against the universe, because the universe is infinite and abundant. We are the universe.
There is only one thing happening, and it's your consciousness. And
right.
I think that's definitely, I think, the next kind of step that we need to take is the quantum leap we need to take as humanity to realize that there's only one of us. And it's a big jump, because we've got to reconcile the parts of ourselves that we're yet to accept, the parts of ourselves we don't like. We have to understand that we are the villain and the hero. We have to understand that we're the light and the dark. And when we get to that place of just unapologetic self-acceptance, it's only in that place that we can meet others around us or the external world with compassion.
Absolutely.
And until that point, we can't.
Well, isn't it so fascinating, the further you go through like personal development, self-awareness, and you realize that anything that triggers you about another person has to mean that it exists inside of you.
That's right. Yeah.
And so as you evolve, I guess, for lack of a better word, you find that it just doesn't bother you anymore. It doesn't annoy you, because you have forgiven those parts of yourself that would have been, because it's all projection anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it's back to the empowerment conversation. And this is why I do love supporting entrepreneurs, publishing entrepreneurs, because we're so focused on solutions. We don't have time to complain.
Yeah, that's right. High quality problems.
High quality problems. I like that. Yeah.
Upgrade your problems.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Most people's problems are their problems aren't big enough. I think it's an amazing place to start, on your journey. What are you worrying about that person not texting you back? Or you're wondering, how you're going to solve whatever crisis in the world. I think we can never eliminate challenge. We can never eliminate problems per se, because they're our grounds for growth. But we can definitely substitute the type of things that we invest our worry and concern and
your greatest energy, your time, your focus, your attention. We're in an attention-based society now, because everyone's fighting for our attention.
That's right.
And so you want to focus your attention on what matters to you most, and then you'll find that you just don't have all this leftover energy to complain or to be a victim.
Yeah.
And so with your book, which legacy disorder, and how the foundations of leadership need to transform, or else they won't be leaving a legacy. And we're seeing that happen over and over again. What would you say are like 2 or 3 of the key takeaways that a leader needs in order to make sure that their legacy lasts?
Yeah, I think that there's 5 key principles I introduced in the beginning of the book, and I'll speak to a couple that I think really speak to this question. Whatever we choose to seek power over has power over us. I think that's the first one that's really, I think, important to understand, because so often in the journey of a leader kind of rising to success and becoming powerful, the tendency we have to want to preserve and protect that power is often, I think, what creates corruptibility, and the truth about power, I believe, and I believe even more through the exploration of writing Legacy Disorder, is that power chooses us. It's not something that we can control forever. Even if we try to, at some point we have to let go of life itself. There's going to be a point of surrender at some point, and I think the relationship with power is a really interesting one, because in my kind of more idealistic mind, when I was younger, I was very naive to power. I really thought that love could sort of override any dynamics of power. But there's a lot of layers to that, and we have a world that's built on many different relationships with many different power dynamics, and a lot of us want to be the one. I think inevitably, probably all of us want to be the one that is in control, and so often that's not the case, and it creates these power imbalances. And I think we need leadership in our world that is driving a different kind of relationship with power. Historically, I think we've had a relationship with power that's power and control, and I want to advocate for a world where we marry power and love, and actually we see that that's an even more powerful force, and that you can have both. Because I've even noticed it in my journey, the more powerful I become, the more suspicious people become of you. People start to project their unconscious relationship with power, which I think has been modeled so many times as a powerful person is going to be someone that's corruptible. A powerful person is going to be a person that seeks to control or act in self-interest.
Or
Manipulate, exactly. And I do actually think it's an unconscious projection of how someone someone is revealing to you often how they would act, in that position of power, and they're projecting that onto you. And I think that that's very interesting, because a lot of people don't know how to feel congruent and kind of calm and deserving of power. So it plays out in all of these really kind of skewed ways.
And I love what you said, power and love, because that's sustainable. Like, as soon as you said that, I just took a deep breath. It's like, what would that be like when our leaders embrace power with love?
Yeah.
Because it's also sustainable, and then it doesn't burn the leader out.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So and the second point was what we seek to control controls us, and it's the same kind of concept. I think it usually what has happened, well, not usually, but I would say for the last few generations, what we've seen is this massive rise, especially in the boomer generation, to power. Huge amounts of wealth and economy and success that were built after the war from their parents, and they've reached a point, I think, where probably, like, my take is the scarcity of the generation before them who lost everything. And I actually interviewed my 101-year-old grandma for the forward
That's beautiful.
of Legacy Disorder, because I was interested in that generation's perception of the boomer generation. So she obviously raised my mom, who is a baby boomer. And I think what sort of transferred in that generational kind of process was the boomers built power, substantial amounts of power, a lot of them, but they adopted the scarcity from their parents. And so they developed this relationship with power generationally, where once they had what they wanted, it became about protecting and preserving, rather than continually giving and being generous and choosing to create a more altruistic and compassionate world. And I think now we're on this very interesting precipice where that generation can still come to the table. That generation still have a huge amount of resource and finance to be able to completely shift the dial in the direction this world heads. A lot of them still are leading investors in companies like ours, Silicon Valley companies. And if there's a shift in consciousness that happens, soon, in how they conceive legacy, what legacy really means. Like, can you get comfortable with the idea that you might not get to experience the fruits? Can you find a humility and a surrender and a joy in serving something bigger than you, enough to be able to start to move money in more altruistic directions? And I think that I hope the book inspires that kind of paradigm shift.
And knowing that you're impacting generations to come, you know?
That's right. Well, changing the world. I think, we are, you said it before, in this point of rapid technological advancement, and the decisions that we make now around, the type of leaders we invest in, the type of founders we invest in, the type of technologies we invest in, what the intent is, what the values are behind those companies. This isn't just going to affect the world for another generation or two. This is going to affect the world for, 1,000+ years to come, because the acceleration of things like artificial intelligence, it's predicted to be 1 billion times more intelligent than humans in several hundred years. And just to give kind of a comparative point, Einstein's IQ was about 160. The average American IQ is probably about 100, 110.
It is actually 100, because
100.
every year the IQ test goes down, because it's the 100 has to always be the average.
Yeah.
And so the IQs are going down.
Well, there you go.
The 100 today is very different than the 100 50 years ago.
Interesting. So, I mean, just as a point of comparison, Einstein was 60% more intelligent than your average American. And from that, we got, the theory of everything, the theory of relativity. So that's with a 60% increase in intelligence. So we are having an intelligence explosion on the planet right now. And what that means is we have to become more conscious with like how we train that intelligence, how we direct that intelligence, who is behind that, intelligence. That matters in a way that I think is still very difficult for a lot of people in our world to conceive right now. And there needs to be, more thought leaders. I think there needs to be more female thought leaders in the space. I think there needs to be...
Yes.
Yeah, just a different perspective,
Right. Well, I love what you say is, if we only have one perspective and, the 30-year-old male who's developing this technology, and that's the only perspective we're getting, then that's a very small bias that it's not going to only impact, the men of the following generations, but also the women, from our voices, our interests, our ideas, our intuitive nature. Like, that's not going to be part of future generations, and that is not a balanced society.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And
that's why I love what you are up to as a female techpreneur in Silicon Valley, and speaking to legacy and speaking to combining and unifying leaders across all generations.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's
with love.
With love, exactly. And I've had people say to me, "What is a 30-year-old writing? Like, why are you writing about legacy?" And I think that, like, this is what needs to happen. Actually, the next generation, the millennial generation, my generation, we have so much power in our hands. Like, there really hasn't been a generation before ours that has the potential to become a billionaire at 30 years old.
Right.
Unless that it was sort of intergenerational family wealth. But even, I think it's like 90% of billionaires were actually self-made. But the systems, the next billion-dollar companies will have been built by teams of 3 people. So there's an incredible amount of power at our fingertips for those that are kind of awake to that opportunity, for the next generation of entrepreneurs. The startups that are being developed right now, surely there's thousands of them a day. The several that become the next unicorns through the uptick that will, the correction once it happens in our economy. These individuals, I think, arguably will have more power than most governments.
Wow.
And I think that's really something to think about. And it's really, from a consumer point of view, if you're not interested in becoming one of those leaders, but purely from a consumer point of view, be conscious with the companies that you support, because it matters in a way that I don't think it ever has quite, we've never experienced kind of a parallel in something like this.
It's amazing. And I mean, this is what social media did, right? It turns the lights on of all the behind the scenes and the back end interactions of businesses, because now the consumer, the customer has a voice to
Yeah.
say, hey, this is how this company is treating me. This is what this company stands for.
Yeah.
And so it's actually become like a decentrification and a decentralization of power.
Yes.
Whereas it used to be in the large industries and in the large companies that could get away with very unethical practices, and they had no accountability. But social media has turned it all on, because now we can see what's really going on behind these companies and how they're treating their customers. And this is why thought leadership is so important, because
Yeah.
we want to know, what are the values of the company? You know, the visionary, the CEO who's running this organization, what are the core foundation beliefs?
That's right. Yeah, it's a very important question to be asking.
Yes.
Very, very important question to be asking. And I think, vulnerability is key. I would encourage any leader to be more vulnerable in how they lead and actually share the inner workings, especially if you're working for, the light. I think it's important to speak that, speak what you believe, speak what you really think, because again, like, these are the conversations we need to be having. And I think the leaders that are willing to meet the world in that kind of new way, they will shine.
Yes.
In a way that leaders that aren't prepared to kind of expose themselves in that way.
Well, it's the transparency, right?
Yeah.
So if you're opaque, that literally refracts light and the light bounces off.
Yeah.
Whereas transparency, the light flows through. And so you're not, because when you're armed and when you're defending yourself, the amount
Yeah.
of time, energy,
That's
efforts,
right.
resources you have to go to protect yourself, versus saying, hey, here's transparency. Here's what's going on inside my organization. These are the foundations. These are the beliefs. These are the core values. You can speak to anyone on the team.
Yeah.
And we're all aligned with this vision and this mission. Whereas if people are corrupting or manipulating or
Yeah.
disempowering, it's only a matter of time before that business is obsolete, because
You would
workers are leaving, and whether it's quiet quitting or just straight up walking out,
Yeah.
they no longer will put up with an organization that doesn't only provide value to the world, but know that they are creating value at the highest level for themselves.
Yeah, well, listen up, all of the CEOs out there and the founders. It really is. It is time to do it differently.
Yeah. And it's a good thing. I mean, there's revolutions that have happened throughout history that have brought humanity to higher states of consciousness.
Totally.
We wouldn't be able to be female entrepreneurs in, 100 years ago,
Yeah.
or even, we only just got the right to vote 100 years ago in Australia. Australia was the first country to
Yeah.
give the women the right to vote.
Really?
And yeah, it was 1 year before United States.
Right.
So, you're from Australia, but like but that foundation of turning of, that's what's possible with revolutions, with
Yeah.
things that can serve more people. But
Yeah.
then you have to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
The few women who are starting businesses, and it's like, I'm like, we fought for the right to do this.
Yeah.
How can you not be taking advantage of it?
No, totally. It's the right wave at the right time. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's you've got to have the right board. You've got to know how to paddle out. You've got to know how to wait for the right wave. And there's a lot of which I think translates as it's the right idea, the right person with the right idea at the right time.
Nice.
That also is motivated to take the action. And when you can align those things, and I completely agree.
And never quit. You cannot let obstacles
totally.
stop you.
I think like that to me, the ultimate antidote for that complex in people is understanding that you really are always living out your dreams, your imagination. And if you're tripping too long on the idea of failure, tripping too long on the idea of that you're going to quit because it's too much or whatever, then you inevitably manifest that reality. But if you can understand that if you have a strong intention and you're focused on that intention, any challenge, any resistance that comes up against you, no matter how dark it might seem at the time, is actually there to help you build the strength and resilience required to birth that idea into the world. And I know for me that was one of the biggest reframes in my journey.
So powerful.
And of course, I think for every founder and entrepreneur, there have been very dark times building what I've been building the past few years. Like the degree in which I have been challenged is so immense. And now I feel like I'm starting to see kind of the other side of that, the rise. And it now makes so much sense that I had to be humbled enough to be able to hold my message with enough integrity. And I think that's the creative process, the process of initiation is always preparing you to be the hero in your own story. But so many people quit, 2 inches from gold.
That's right. And, we're hypnotizing ourselves all the time, right?
Yeah.
We're all in a state of trance. And the way I've always said it is, well, if I'm going to be delusional, I might as well be delusional to the positive.
Yeah.
We're making it all up. And so you're creating your own reality. And I'll never forget the first company that I incorporated. It'll be 20 years as an entrepreneur next month. So
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I'll never forget the moment, because this was back in the day where you couldn't just register a business online. I had to go to the county registrar office in downtown LA and fill out the form to incorporate my business.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget when it came to the place that said, "Who is the CEO?" And I wrote my name next to CEO. And I had come from corporate America, where the idea of being a CEO would be like, oh, you got to work for 20 or 30 years, and climb the ladder. And the whole reality shifted. It went, and I go, oh, I just made myself a CEO. And I realized, oh, we are making it all up. And so I've been an entrepreneur ever since.
Yeah,
but if you're going to be delusional, you might as well play the delusion. Choose your delusion.
Be the main character of your story, not the non-participatory player.
Exactly.
in the video game.
That's perfect.
I think that's an amazing message to finish up on. Be the main character. But Andrea, any kind of final messages to our listeners?
Well, I just want to share how grateful I am that you are putting your brilliance and your heart out there for the world.
Thank you.
Because we need authentic leaders who are also compassionate, and you stand for a revolution that you can be all of it. You can have all of that with the kindness, the generosity, the compassion.
You can have it all, baby.
Yes. And you're actually, as you write about, this is the evolution of leadership.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to watch. You embody it. And I'm just so honored and thrilled to be a part of your book, to be your publisher, and to be along for this ride as this message is coming through you.
Thank you, Andrea. I couldn't imagine anyone else I would have been preferred to be published by. You guys have been amazing, and anyone that's looking for a publisher, I can't recommend these guys enough. And you can find Andrea on most social accounts, platforms, but maybe you want to give a shout out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Andrea Albright is my name on all the socials, and BeverlyHillsPublishing.com is our website.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.